Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I mean, I didn't get a chance to give my kind of instant reaction to Canelo Crawford. I was away, so I thought, it's still a major event, and it has been just, coming off the back of a great weekend of boxing, and I kind of still wanted to do a video around it. So I thought what I wanted to do was to just kind of speak about what is next for Terence Crawford, because there is a tremendous amount of possible options that maybe could be for Terence Crawford, but I don't feel like they've all been kind of investigated enough, in my opinion. And so I'm going to go into depth into my thoughts on that, and it won't be too long of a video, but yeah, like I say, just my thoughts on it. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, and I will try my best to get it out there for you guys. There's been a good selection of members that have already joined, and a good selection of videos that have come from them members, and I really appreciate all the support. Like I said, the link will be in the description, and let's get straight into this discussion. So obviously Terence Crawford, he put on an amazing performance over the weekend, and was able to outbox Canelo and box really, really well, and in the end showcased that him coming up in weight wasn't an issue. A lot of people were saying that that would be a major factor, but he was able to, like I say, dominate the fight for the most part, and even in them later rounds as well, look really, really good and sharp, and be able to improve throughout the fight as well, and find his timing, and just really assert himself as the number one pound for pound fighter in the world, which is what he is. I don't feel like you can argue that anymore. Going into the fight, before the fight, you could say, Alexander Usyk probably was ahead of him. But now, after that fight, even though also, of course, Naoya Inoue went and fought Ahmed Ali this last weekend as well, Inoue looked excellent in that fight, but still, I think what Crawford was able to do, of course, coming up in the weight divisions, becoming undisputed again, showcases that, of course, he is a pound for pound champion. But what's next for him? I mean, he's 37 years of age now, and arguably is fighting still the best of his career, which is crazy. But then at the same time, you look at Alexander Usyk, and he's 38 years old now, and he just said in his post-fight interview after his Daniel Dubois win, 38 is kind of still young realistically. So again, that is showcasing that fighters in boxing can have these late primes if they are a truly special talent. And I feel like, there is a great selection of truly special talents in boxing around at the moment. So I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, like I say, he's 37 years of age, and I think future opponents, I think they are definitely there for him. But again, it might be a bit tough because of what's just happened. I mean, this has to have been most likely by far the biggest payday of his entire career. And it's going to be difficult to be able to match that, and to be able to bring a star who is as big as Canelo in. And realistically, when you think about it, I don't know if there is a star big enough to be able to bring them numbers in. You can list a multiple selection of fights and, names, and I will do so in a second. But again, like I said, I just don't feel like there is a fight which will be able to bring that much attention. Obviously with Netflix, it's also great as well. I feel like he probably won't ever not fight on Netflix again unless he loses. But yeah, like I say, I feel like he needs to continuously fight in these massive fights. And also the fact that he basically has so much freedom now as well makes it a kind of open playing field. And again, that's a difficult thing for matchmakers to look at, because like I say, he has so much freedom. He knows he can fluctuate in weight, and I think he probably won't want to drop down back in weight again. He might, but again, that is down to him. A lot of fighters move up in weight and then they get comfortable at that weight, and then, they bulked up, and then they don't want to cut back down, especially when you're coming off a performance how good, he looked at in the Canelo fight. He's probably thinking to himself, I like this weight. I feel good at this weight. I don't really want to try and go back down. He might even try and go up some more, which is, again, maybe a bit crazy to think, but with the frame that he has, he wasn't massive in that weight category, but he looked good. He looked shredded. But also the height as well. He's 5'9". So again, like I say, he's a good height, I think, to be able to fluctuate in divisions. And you look at Alexander Usyk, he's quite small for the heavyweight division. Yes, he's bulked out, but he's not tremendously, big for the heavyweight division. So I feel like Terence Crawford is in a really good position to be able to fluctuate weight division some more if he wants to. And I think, the major fight in which is kind of being talked about a little bit, which is, a fight in which I'm not actually too bothered about seeing really, is Crawford versus Topuria. This fight could definitely sell well if Topuria, in my opinion, has one or two more fights in the UFC and delivers a couple more, really good brutal boxing knockouts. But again, I think it would just be the case of what we've seen on multiple occasions. I don't think it would be a Ngannou Fury kind of fight. I think it would just be a, Crawford showcasing his skill is superior in boxing than that of Topuria. Yes, Topuria has the power, but again, he would be moving up in weight as well, and I just don't see it. I don't see it being a good fight. I think Topuria is an excellent boxer, and the way that he sets up his shots and his timing is really good in the UFC and MMA, where fighters aren't specialised in boxing. And yeah, like I say, I feel like Topuria stands out as the best boxer in the UFC currently. But Crawford, what he's just achieved to become, like I say, the best boxer, arguably in the world, is, I think he would just be able to put on a boxing masterclass against Topuria because, like I say, Topuria, of course, has trained for a tremendous amount of other things in his career. Of course, his grappling, his wrestling, his jiu-jitsu, everything like that is, strikes that aren't, just boxing punches that he throws, his kicks, his elbows, his knees, everything like that. It's not focused on boxing. Of course, that's always the argument with MMA fighters going and facing boxers. And I just, think this fight could maybe sell well with Topuria bringing a big Spanish fan base over. And again, like I say, if he delivers a couple more knockouts, makes a bit more of a bigger name for himself. But I would much prefer to see Topuria fight Islam Makhachev. Maybe if that one happens and Topuria knocks out Makhachev, then we could maybe talk of Crawford Topuria. But at that point, that could be, in another maybe not 2 years' time, maybe in like another year's time. So again, are we keeping Crawford out just for a fight like that? Again, I'm not entirely sure. So if not, then possible names like, your Umbilis, of course he drew against Martinez, so again I don't feel like there would be a massive draw for that, but I will also be interested to see if, the IBF or any of the other sanctioning bodies are going to get involved and try and strip Terence Crawford if he doesn't try and fight the mandatories. That might be interesting. A Jaron Ennis fight, of course, was always the fight in which fans wanted to see down in the welterweight division. Jaron Ennis, I feel like because of the matchmaking he's had, hasn't really had the opportunity to really build a big fan base. And again, I don't think he is a massive star name just yet. I think he has the ability to be, but I think, like I say, just for his matchmaking and the fact that he's fighting Uiza Lima in this next fight, again, isn't helping his matchmaking. Maybe it's no fault of his own. Maybe he's just not able to get the opponents, but still, like I say, I feel like the hype still wouldn't be there. A Charlo, maybe Jamal Charlo in the super middleweight division, that could happen. There's a bit of a name, there with the Charlo name, perhaps that could happen. Eubank, Eubank was rumoured to fight Canelo at one point, and Eubank name is pretty big, and if Eubank can get through the Conor Benn rematch and can look better, obviously he trains also now. It's been, just announced today that he is back with Bomac, so they both have the same coach, so that would be interesting to see if that would happen. But possibly that could happen. Again, I'm not entirely sure. But something in which I wanted to point out, and probably is the matchup I'd want to see most for Terence Crawford. It might sound a bit outlandish, but like I say, it's just my opinion. A name that hasn't been mentioned and in a massive amount is Dmitry Bivol, and I think there would be a hype there. Of course, Bivol was the only other guy other than Floyd Mayweather to beat Canelo. So if Floyd Mayweather isn't fighting Crawford, which I doubt that Floyd would want to do because it is so much of a risk for him, and I'd assume that they would only fight in a professional boxing fight, so again, not one of Floyd's silly exhibitions. I think Bivol, still in the prime of his career, got majority of the belts in the light heavyweight division. There's not really a set plan of what's going on with Dmitry Bivol at the moment. I mean, nobody really knows what's happening with the Beterbiev rematch, and Beterbiev seems to be going kind of down his other route to try and find other matchups and things like that instead. So Bivol Perhaps, I don't know if he's trying to skip over the rematch, the trilogy or something like that. But again, he hasn't got a matchup there ready made at this current moment in time. So, maybe that fight could be made. I mean, there is a bit of a height difference, but not a major one. I mean, Bivol is 6 foot and Crawford is 5'9", and the fact that he is now a glorified super middleweight fighter, Crawford, he could move up into the light heavyweight division. I feel like he did come in a bit heavier when he actually ended up fighting. Of course, Bivol would come in heavier as well. Maybe they could do a rehydration clause. I'm not a massive fan of them, but perhaps for a fight like that, that might happen. But also at the same time, Bivol isn't known for being a crazily big puncher, so this could be a truly great pound for pound boxing chess match, which, in my opinion, would be the fight in which I would probably want to see the most. Like I say, the one guy who beat Canelo, and, well, other than, of course, Floyd Mayweather, and somebody who is in the prime of his career and has been headlining multiple big events out in Saudi and has been able to gather a good name for himself. I think that could sell really well. I'm sure it wouldn't be, a fiery build-up between the two of them, but they're both, soft-spoken kind of fighters. But I still believe that could be the route to go down. Would that be with, Seller Promotions? Maybe, because Bivol, I mean, I believe he's with Matchroom, but I'm sure they would be able to work something out there. And again, like I say, I'm sure His Excellency, who of course has worked with Dmitry Bivol on multiple occasions now, would probably be willing to, let that fight happen. I think, of course, the ball is in Terence Crawford's court. Who he wants to fight, when he wants to fight again. It still could be a while until we see him back. Like I say, it seems like he is fighting kind of once a year at the moment. Will that become less frequent with matchups? Possibly. But again, in my opinion, that is the fight in which I would like to see the most for Terence Crawford, in the way of, factoring in the selling value, the, need of a big name, the weight division, if it's possible or not. I don't want to see him move up into the heavyweight division because I just don't think that makes sense. But yeah, I think that is the fight, like I say, that I would like to see at the moment. If I'm, being stupid and maybe missing somebody, or you think that fight is never going to happen, let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate all the support, and like the video. If you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.